If you've ever watched The Amazing Digital Circus and felt strangely uncanny at times, you're not alone. There's something weird about this show, and I'm talking about the environment itself. If you pause almost anywhere, you can end up with what looks like a liminal space wallpaper, and I don't think that's accidental. Over the last few weeks, I've collected more than 200 screenshots from the show because I kept noticing the same thing over and over again. Almost every environment in the circus feels nostalgic, lonely, uncanny, or strangely beautiful, sometimes all at once. And weirdly enough, there's actual psychological research that explains why. Liminal spaces aren't just an internet aesthetic, they're a real psychological phenomenon. I'm sure you've heard about them before. The word liminal literally means threshold. A liminal space is an in-between place, a transitional one, like hallways, entryways, staircases, airports, places you're supposed to pass through rather than stay in. According to research, certain features consistently make places like this feel uncanny. Things like distorted proportions, impossible layouts, weird lighting, fake social presence, and objects that feel slightly out of place. And once I started looking for these patterns in the circus, I realized that the show uses every single one of them to create unforgettable visuals. Let's start with distorted proportions and scale. The circus constantly feels the wrong size. One moment it's impossibly cluttered and the next it feels enormous and empty. Characters are constantly towered upon by their surroundings. There are massive rooms, giant toys, oversized props, and the way the show presents distorted proportions is a clear predictor of environmental uncanniness, because it breaks our expectations about how a place should function. The circus doesn't feel built for people. It feels like somebody tried to recreate a massive hallway, and that feeling appears everywhere in the architecture itself. Outside of the character bedrooms, the stage area, and the lounge, almost every environment in the circus feels transitional. Long hallways, huge corridors, staircases, doorways leading to more doorways. The circus rarely gives us places that feel lived in. There's no benches, chairs, or places to sit and relax. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to have fun, go places, be distracted. So instead, the circus gives us spaces that the characters are supposed to move through constantly. The entire circus is one giant in-between space. The characters can move forward, but they can't go back home either. They're trapped in a perpetual transitional state, and the architecture reflects that perfectly. But this isn't the only thing that makes these environments feel uncanny. Lighting plays a huge role too. One thing I kept noticing while gathering screenshots was how often the lighting doesn't feel quite right. Sometimes shadows point to different directions. Sometimes rooms remain strangely dark despite being illuminated, and there are many pitch-black exits at the end of every hallway. The office images we get in episode 8 are especially good examples. The scene appears to be illuminated by a camera flash, yet objects are lit in a way that don't match where the camera actually is. It's like someone else lit everything with a flashlight from the right or the left, while someone else took the picture from a different angle. There's even this dark hole in the corner of the room. What even is that? The overall result is subtle. Most viewers won't consciously notice it because the render is so good. But it's exactly the kind of inconsistency that our brains pick up on when trying to understand the space. Now let's talk about empty public spaces. This is probably one of the strangest liminal qualities in the entire show because the circus is actually huge, yet it constantly feels abandoned. Researchers found that public spaces become significantly more uncanny when they're empty because our brains expect people to be there. That's why empty schools feel creepy, empty malls feel creepy, or even empty airports. And the circus takes advantage of this constantly. There are giant attractions with nobody using them, huge spaces with barely any inhabitants, entire environments that look like they were built for hundreds of people, yet only a handful of characters occupy them. Sometimes the emptiness feels lonely, sometimes peaceful, and sometimes terrifying. But it's almost always present. The office images from episode 8 again take this further. The places feel like people disappeared in the middle of their working day. Coffee cups everywhere, paperwork thrown randomly, signs of life everywhere, yet nobody is present. Some desks feel incomplete. The computers don't even have wires or mice. This chair faces a wall, the cabinets are arranged strangely and open. Spaces feel like somebody tried to reconstruct reality from memory, close enough to be recognizable, wrong enough to feel eerie. And occasionally, the show does something even stranger. Instead of removing people from a space, it adds fake people. And one of the most interesting findings from liminal space research is that social presence affects uncanniness differently depending on context. Humans can make public spaces feel normal, but artificial social presence often has the opposite effect. And that's exactly what happens in this restaurant scene. At first glance, it looks occupied until you realize that the mannequins aren't actually doing anything. They're not eating, their plates are empty, they're performing the idea of being people. And somehow that's creepier than if the room had been empty. All this brings us to another major driver of uncanniness in liminal spaces: objects placed where they shouldn't be. The show is full of them: gift tables without children or cake, misaligned furniture, walls painted to resemble exits, massive phone toys and cars, which is interesting because these objects represent movement and communication, but nobody has anybody to call. Nobody has anywhere to go. So these objects become reminders of the freedom that they've lost. Psychologists call this configural deviation, when familiar objects appear in unfamiliar contexts or gain different meanings than what we're used to. The objects themselves aren't scary. What's scary is that our brains know that something is wrong. We just can't immediately identify what. And that's where a lot of liminal horror comes from. Not danger, just confusion. The feeling that reality is slightly misaligned. One of my favorite examples of this is the lamp sitting at the edge of the table. Every instinct says that it should fall, but it doesn't. It's a tiny detail, yet it creates the same amount of discomfort as impossible architecture. The same digital mistakes happen all throughout the show. Objects clip into each other, we see different textures that we've never seen before, reflections appear in strange places, especially in the reflective cubes throughout the circus. The environment behaves both like reality and like an old video game, which is fitting because glitches and clipping are another form of configural deviation. The paintings scattered throughout the circus are yet another great example. Many of them depict eyes, curtains opening into black voids, disturbing masks, infinite darkness. The paintings themselves feel like miniature liminal spaces embedded inside larger liminal spaces, constant reminders that someone is watching. The show also uses repetition constantly. The structure of the circus itself often feels repetitive, as if every path leads to another version of the same place. And repetition is surprisingly important when it comes to uncanniness because our brains are built to look for patterns. But when it becomes excessive, the pattern makes it feel like the environment isn't growing organically, but it's copying and pasting itself. This is one of the reasons hallways are so common in liminal space photography. A hallway is already a transitional space, but a hallway with 10 identical doors is much stranger than one with more versatility. And Digital Circus constantly uses this feeling. The checkered floors, the cubes, the balconies, the arches, all of these are recurring structures that you can get lost in. Even the paintings scattered throughout the circus often repeat the same imagery. The circus starts feeling like a collection of recurring symbols. And all of this repetition becomes even more unsettling when it means stagnation, a routine that never changes, day after day after day. This iconic song doesn't just describe the character's situation, it describes the environment itself, because that's ultimately what repetition is in the circus: entrapment, the feeling that tomorrow will look exactly like today, and the day after that, and the day after that. And when you combine all of these uncanny elements together, the result starts resembling a popular internet aesthetic, weirdcore, which focuses on low-quality edits that create confusion, nostalgia, and surreal imagery. And I think that's the circus in a nutshell. The pilot especially feels like weirdcore brought to life in a way. Everything is loud, playful, and colorful, yet there's this overwhelming sense of dread in the air. The bright colors almost make the feeling stronger because they clash with what the characters are actually experiencing. There's even an entire room containing nothing but a carousel entrapped in darkness, a childhood symbol associated with joy and amusement, placed inside an environment that feels obscure and scary. That's basically weirdcore in a single image, which is probably one of the reasons the show creates such a strong sense of anemoia. It's fairly common to have this feeling when encountering liminal spaces, especially in weirdcore. As someone who didn't really grow up playing old video games, it's strange how familiar the circus feels. Some scenes genuinely feel like screenshots from games I've never played, memories I don't actually have, and yet they feel extremely nostalgic. That's the power of liminal spaces. They aren't just scary, they're also emotional, sometimes comforting, sometimes lonely, and sometimes strikingly beautiful. Another recurring visual choice in the show that I really have to mention is how characters are positioned directly in the center of these environments. While many liminal space photographs do not feature social presence, Digital Circus does the opposite. The circus places characters as centerpieces of the liminal space, and because the environments are already emotionally loaded, they amplify whatever the character is feeling in the moment. When Gengo's mental state deteriorates, the environments around her often feel increasingly isolating. When Gamigo realizes that his memories aren't real, the emptiness surrounding him becomes part of the scene's emotional weight. The entire place makes him look small, hurt, and overwhelmed. When Ragata gets high or feels hopeless, the environment warps and changes to reflect her emotions and help us understand her story through visual cues. Of course, this doesn't happen all the time. As I mentioned before, the environment is sometimes in contradiction with the state of the characters to emphasize the irony of their existence. But when it happens, the spaces stop functioning as backgrounds and become extensions of the characters' inner states. So the backgrounds become storytelling devices. The show isn't simply copying all these aesthetics and practices that we've talked about. It understands that liminal spaces aren't just empty hallways, they're emotional states, places where meaning feels uncertain and that are simultaneously comforting and disturbing. And in a show about people trapped between reality and illusion, identity and oblivion, hope and despair, there really couldn't be a more fitting aesthetic.